Hello Internet, this is Jam4077, and here are the updated versions of the decks I used in my Duels with GX Era decks video. These decks have all been updated to fit with the January TCG ban list. With all that said, let's begin with my Ancient Gear deck profile. I run 2 copies of Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Golem, 1 Ancient Gear Ultimate Pound, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Wyvern, 2 copies of Gold Gadget. Mainly put this card in to help with get monsters out in the field faster. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Frame, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Silver, 1 Ancient Gear Gadget. Did I call this Ancient Gear Silver? I meant Silver Gadget. My bad. 2 copies of Ancient Gear Box, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Hunting Hound, and 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Then for spells, I have 1 Overload Fusion, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Catapult, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Fusion, 1 Terraforming, 1 Monster Reborn. We have the Master Rules 2020 revision card here, which is going to stay in the deck until YGO Pro decides to update, the gaming platform to fit with this rule. You're going to be seeing this in all the deck profiles that I showcased in the other video. I have 2 copies of Ancient Gear Fortress and 3 copies of Gear Town. Then I have 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence and 1 Solemn Warning. For the side deck, which doesn't really change all that much, if there is a change, I'll let you guys know about it. For side decks, I have 2 copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being, the 1 Dino Wrestler Pancratops. Then we have World Chalice Guard Dragon Armorduke. I have been kind of thinking about maybe changing this to other super poly targets, maybe like Light Solomon Great Violet Chimera, or maybe that one Predaplant that requires 3 Dart monsters. I haven't decided yet. Then we have Star Venom Fusion Dragon. Then we have Mud Dragon of the Swamp, 2 Twin Twister, 3 Super Polymerization, 2 Evenly Match, 1 Red Reboot, and 1 Solemn Warning. Then we have the extra deck. I have 2 copies of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. Definitely one of your big hitters for this deck. Then we have Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Megaton Golem, and 3 copies of Ancient Gear Howitzer. Definitely one of the most easier fusion monsters to get out with this deck, and can help bring out some of your big heavy hitters like Reactor Dragon or your Ancient Gear Golems. I have 1 Xyz, and that is Gear Giant X, to help mostly for its Rota count effect. Then for links, we have 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 2 Platinum Gadget, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Ballistic Shooter, and 1 Predaplant Verte Anaconda. So yes, this is my Ancient Gear deck, and we're moving on to the Cyber Dragon. Well, I was half right. It wasn't Cyber Dragon, it was Cyber Angels who were next. So yeah, let's get onto the deck profile. 2 copies of Manju of the 10,000 Hands, 2 Ash Blossom Joy Spring, 3 copies of Diviner of the Heralds. This card definitely helps give more speed into the deck, and it should be coming out in the OCG sometime very soon. Then we have 1 Herald of the Orange Light and 1 Herald of the Green Light. Then we have 2 copies of Cyber Petite Angel, 2 copies of Cyber Egg Angel. Then we have Cyber Angel Varsh, or Fresh. I think it's Fresh. 1 Cyber Angel Dakini. Then we have 1 Cyber Angel Izana. Then we have 3 copies of Cyber Angel Ben 10, 2 copies of Cyber Angel Ida 10, and 2 copies of Cyber Angel Natasha. For spells, we have 2 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Then we have 1 Merciful Machine Angel, 1 Monster Reborn, 3 copies of Preparation of Rites. Then we have 3 copies of Machine Angel Ritual. Now, I have seen a lot of people using best if I show you. This card, Machine Angel Absolute Zero in their deck, but it just didn't work out for me. So I took it out. Then we have 2 called by the Grave, 1 Incarnation Machine Angel. Then we have 3 copies of Ritual Sanctuary, help special summon out some of your favorite monsters. Then we have 1 Solemn Judgment. The side deck is pretty much the same, so we won't get into that. Instead, we'll go straight into the extra deck with 3 copies of Herald of the Arclight. Then we have 1 Gauntlet Launcher, 1 Exciton Knight, 1 the Phantom Knights of Cursed Javelin, 1 Herald of Pure Light, 1 Borlo Dragon, 1 Topologic Zoroboros, 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Hip Hoshinigan? I think that's how you say it. I could be wrong. Then we have 1 Herald of Mirages. So yeah, this is my Cyber Angel deck. Now we'll get onto the Cyber Dragon deck. Okay, here is the Cyber Dragon deck profile. And as you probably see, we have a couple of outliers here. We have 1 Dark Magician and 1 Red Eyes Black Dragon. You're probably going to be seeing these cards in a lot of other decks from now on because of the future monster these 2 monsters create. Then we have 3 copies of Cyber Dragon, 2 copies of Galaxy Soldier, 1 Cyber Dragon Dry, 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Veer, 2 Ash Blossom Enjoys Spring, 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core, 2 copies of Cyber Dragon not not Chister, not Chister. I'm probably not saying that right. Then we have 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Hers. For spells, we have 2 copies of Overload Fusion, 1 Red Ice Fusion, 2 copies of Cyber Reverse System, 2 Power Bond, 2 Cyber Emergency, 3 copies of Machine Duplication, 1 Foolish Burial, I should say, 1 Monster Reborn, Cyber Repair Plant, I run 2 of those, 1 Limit Removal, 1 Cyber Load Fusion, 1 Cybernetic Overflow, and 1 Sown Judgment. The side deck's pretty much the same, so let's move on to the extra deck. We have 1 copy of Cyber Iron Dragon, 1 Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon, which, despite the fact we're getting the new Master Rule 5, this card could still get a lot of use. 1 Dragon of Red Eyes, the new go-to fusion monster for a lot of decks from now on. Until Konami either decides to ban this card or abandon the cards that makes this card possible. Then we have 2 Cyber Twin Dragon, 1 Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon, and 2 copies of Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon. Then we have 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Infinity, and 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Nova. For links, we have 2 Cyber Dragon Seeker, and 1 Predaplant, Verte Anaconda. So yeah, that's it for the Cyber Dragon deck. Now we move on to the Cyber Dark deck. Okay, here is my Cyber Dark deck profile, which, I'm going to be honest here, had to go through a good number of revisions here. Because first turn with a normal summon of one of these, and then equipping with one of these, is not the ideal first turn for this deck. That's just a one-way ticket to lose town, basically. You basically need some type of first turn play to help you survive long enough to the next turn. And we have a couple of those here. Let's just start things off with 1 copy of Dark Magician and 1 copy of Rise by Dragon. Then we have 2 copies of Wind Witch Glass Spell. Yes, we're including the Wind Witches in this deck. And it works as a good first turn play for this deck. Then we have 2 copies of Cyber Dark Keel, 2 copies of Cyber Dark Horn, and 3 copies of Cyber Dark Edge. Then we have 3 copies of Cyber Dark Cannon, and 3 copies of Cyber Dark Claw. Then we have 1 copy of Lindling. Basically, what this card does is, when it's equipped to a monster, its original talent will become 1,000, which is pretty good with these guys, as these will automatically become 25k beaters, which is pretty cool. And they could also attack twice per turn, which is another nice bonus. Then we have 3 copies of Wind Witch Ice Spell and 1 copy of Wind Witch Snowbell. Then we have 2 copies of Overload Fusion, 1 Red Ice Fusion, 1 Polymerization, 1 Cyber Dark Impact, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Called by the Grave, 2 copies of Future Fusion, and 3 copies of the Field Spell Cyber Dark Inferno. For tracks, we have 2 Infinite Impermanents, 1 Dark Sacrifice, which is a pretty good card to send these guys to the graveyard so you can set up your Cyber Dark plays with these guys. And then 1 Solemn Judgment. Side deck is the same, so we'll move on to the extra deck. 1 5-headed dragon, which mainly you use to equip to your Cyber Dark Fusion monsters. Speaking of which, I have 2 copies of Cyber Darkness Dragon, 1 Dragoon of Red Eyes, 1 Cyber Dark Dragon, 2 copies of Elder Entity Nist, not used to equip to the Cyber Dark Fusions, but mostly to pop your opponent's cards. 1 Shooting Quasar Dragon, 1 Shooting Star Dragon, 1 Clearwing Synchro Dragon, 1 Windwitch Winterbell, 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Wee Witch's Apprentice, and 1 Predapant Verte Anaconda. So, yeah, that's it for my Cyber Dark deck. Let's move on to, I think it's Destiny Heroes. Okay, here is my Destiny Hero deck profile. To start this off with, I have 1 copy of Destiny Hero Dogma, 1 Destiny Hero Plasma, 1 Elemental Hero Honest Neos, 3 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious, 3 copies of Vision Hero Barash, or Brish, Faris? I'm going to say Faris. Then we have 1 Destiny Hero Dyna Tag, 3 copies of Elemental Hero Stratos, 2 copies of Destiny Hero Celestial. Then we have 1 copy of Destiny Hero Drill Dark, 2 copies of Destiny Hero Draw Hand, 2 copies of Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, 2 copies of Vision Hero Vion, 2 copies of Vision Hero Increase, 1 Destiny Hero Discommander, and 1 Destiny Hero Dreamer. Then for spells, we have 2 Emergency Call, 1 A Hero Lives, 2 Polymerization, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 2 Destiny Draw, 3 Fusion Destiny, 1 Monster Reborn, 3 copies of Mass Change, and 1 Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. Mainly have this card in here for Isolde plays to get out Dreamer or Discommander. Then we have 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. Side deck's about the same, so let's just go into the extra deck. We have 1 copy of Destiny and Dragoon, 1 Destiny Hero Dustopia, 1 Destiny Hero Dominance, 2 copies of Destiny Hero Dystopia, 1 copy of Vision Hero Adoration, yeah, that's it. 1 copy of Masked Hero Enki, 1 Vision Hero Trinity, and 2 copies of Masked Hero Dark Law, and 1 Destiny Hero Dangerous. Great. Now I got Darkwing Duck playing in my head. And you're a fan of that show, so do you. Then we have 1 Extra Hero Dread Decimator, 2 copies of Destiny Hero Cross Crusader, and 1 Isolde 2 Tales of the Noble Knights. So, yeah, that's it for my Destiny Hero deck profile. Now let's get on to the Hero deck profile. Okay, here is my Hero deck profile for you guys. Starting this off with, we have 1 copy of Destiny Hero Plasma, 1 Elemental Hero Honest Neos, 3 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious, 3 copies of Vision Hero Faris, 1 Destiny Hero Dyna Tag, 1 Evil Hero Adusted Gold, 3 copies of Elemental Hero Stratos, 1 Destiny Hero Celestial, 1 Destiny Hero Liquid Soldier, 1 Destiny Hero Solid Soldier, not Destiny Hero, Elemental Hero Solid Soldier, Um, then we have 2 copies of Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, 2 copies of Vision Hero Vion, 2 copies of Vision Hero Increase, and 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Then for spells, we have 3 copies of E-Emergency Call, 1 A Hero Lives, 1 Dark Calling, 2 Polymerization, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Miracle Fusion, 2 Fusion Destiny, 1 Monster Reborn, 3 copies of Mass Change, and 1 Solemn Judgment. Side deck's the same, so let's move on to the extra deck. 1 copy of Evil Hero Malicious Bane, 1 Destiny Hero Dystopia, 1 Vision Hero Adoration, 1 Master Hero Enki, 1 Master Hero Acid, 1 Elemental Hero Absolute Zero, 1 Vision Hero Trinity, 1 Elemental Hero Sunriser, or Sunrise, I should say. Then we have 1 Master Hero Darklaw, and 1 copy of Destiny Hero Dangerous. Then for links, we have 1 Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Extra Hero Dread Decimator, 2 copies of Extra Hero Cross Crusader, and 1 Isolde, 2 Tales of the Noble Knights. Okay, that's it for my hero deck. Now we are moving on to the Ice Counter deck. Okay, here is the Ice Counter deck. I know some of you are going, Ice Counters? I don't remember seeing these in GX. Well, these made their appearance in the GX manga, which is its own separate kind of thing from the anime. And these were primarily used by Alexis Rhodes. And as for real life cards, God, they really need some better support. Because I was getting my butt handed to by this deck constantly. I had to basically rebuild the deck from the ground up. Much like how I did with Cyber Darks. Anyway, let's move on to the deck itself. 1 copy of Dark Magician and 1 Red Eyes Black Dragon. Then we have 3 copies of Snowdust Dragon. Then we have 3 copies of Cold Enchanter, 3 copies of Snowman Creator, and 3 copies of Snow Dragon. Then we have 3 copies of Goblin Debug, 3 copies of Tin Goldfish, and 3 copies of Silent Angular. Then we have 1 Red Eyes Fusion, 2 Moray of Greed, 2 Trade-In, 3 copies of the Claw of Heremos. Basically helps turn some of your deck cards into some of them more useful. Then we have 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Monster Reborn, and 2 copies of Called by the Grave. Then we have 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence, 2 copies of Gravehole, and 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. Then side deck's the same, so we'll move straight to the extra deck where we have 1 copy of Dragon of Red Eyes, 2 copies of Red Eyes Black Dragon Sword, and 1 copy of Rocket Heremos Cannon. For Xyz, we have 1 Bahamut Shark, 1 Snowless Giant, number 41 Babushka the Terribly Tired Tapir. Then we have 1 Evil Storm Exile Knight, and 2 copies of Totally Awesome. I'm not sorry. Then we have 1 copy of Boral Sword Dragon, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Miss Starboy, and 1 Predaplant Verte Anaconda. So yeah, that's it for the Ice Counters deck. Now let's move on to the Yokai deck. Okay, so here is my Yokai deck. It's kind of like a traditional zombie type deck, but with a few kind of odd choices here and there. But the deck still plays good. With all that said, let's go through the deck profile. We have one copy of Dark Magician, one Rise Black Dragon, one Doom King, Balder Groch, Balder Groch. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Um, two copies of Nine-Tailed Fox, two copies of Goka, the Pyre of Malice, two copies of Necroworld Banshee, two copies of Gozuki, three copies of Mizuki, two copies of Shadow Doji, three copies of Pyramid Turtle, three copies of Unizombie, and two copies of Glow Up Bulb. Then for spells, we have two Book of Life, one copy of One for one Red Ice Fusion, one Power of Avarice, one Terraforming, one Foolish, one Monster Reborn, two Super Polymerization, three copies of Zombie World, and for traps we have two Infinite Impermanence and one Soul Judgment. Now, the inclusion of the two Super Polymerizations means that there is a change in the side deck. Taking their place in the side deck are two copies of Dark Ruler No More. Aside from these two, the side deck is almost the same. Aside from these two. Now, let's move straight on to the extra deck. We have one copy of Dragon of Red Eyes, two copies of Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon. These are your Super Poly targets. Then we have one copy of Drago Klytos, Corrupt Nether Soul Dragon. Then we have one Beals of the Diabolic Dragon, one Borrelode Savage Dragon, one Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend, one Cyrus Quantum Dragon, one Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon, and one Black Rose Dragon. Then for links we have one Boral Sword Dragon, one Nightmare Unicorn, one Nightmare Phoenix, one Vampire Sucker, and one Prairie Plant, Verte, and Akanda. So yeah, these are all my GX decks. If you enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up as well as subscribe to my channel. That way you can see more videos on Yu-Gi-Oh! Also, please check out the duel video where you can see these decks in action. Yeah, I guess that's it for now. This is Jam407, signing out.